What's up, guys? Welcome to UFC Jiu-Jitsu Breakdown, brought to you by Shell BJJ right here in Portland, Texas, where we analyze the art of Jiu-Jitsu used at the highest level by UFC competitors, and we break it down for you so you can understand what's happening in the cage and so you can fully grasp the power of Jiu-Jitsu. So just recently, Chris Hooper managed to land a slick Darce choke on his opponent, Borshchev. Some people might call it a Bravo choke, and that's actually how SureDog listed the win on their website. But for the most part, the jiu-jitsu community calls it a Darce choke. The term Bravo choke usually refers to a very similar choke that's done with the gi. But that's okay, we can forgive them. Now, while Hooper was definitely overwhelming Borshchev never once stopped trying to survive. He was constantly trying to escape and trying to protect himself. At one point in the second round, Borshchev actually managed to escape full mount for a moment and recompose what we call butterfly guard. In doing so, he actually managed to get an underhook on Hooper. The underhook is when you go underneath the arm and hook the body. It can lead to very offensive moves, like pushing him over for a sweep, using it to stand back up, or using butterfly guard itself to set up leg lock entries. Chase Hooper recognizes this immediately, so he takes his arm and wraps over his underhook into what we call a whizzer. Now, the whizzer is great for simply shutting the door on the underhook. However, if you have long, skinny arms, much like Chase Hooper, you can take the whizzer a step further and chase the Darce choke. So little by little, Hooper simply starts to step past Borshchev's butterfly guard and manages to pass right into side control. But the moment Hooper passes to side control, he shoots his whizzer underneath the head and begins to set up the Darce choke. But Borshchev still has a decent underhook, and he's keeping his hand high up around Hooper's back. That is the only thing stopping Hooper from fully locking up the submission. Keeping his hand high up, making it difficult for Hooper to reach past the back of the head and grab his other arm's bicep, which is exactly what he needs to do to finish this choke. So you can see Hooper trying to use the back of his tricep to push against the back of Borshchev's head in a hope that it'll allow his Darce hand to pop through far enough to reach his bicep. But even that doesn't quite close the deal. What happens next, though, is a chain reaction of events that changes everything. As Hooper is adjusting, trying to get closer to the head and therefore closer to the choke, Borshchev uses this opportunity to come up to his knees. But as he comes up to his knees, Hooper reacts by moving further towards the head into the sprawl position. Then, the worst thing happens for Borshchev. His underhook weakens. In just a matter of moments, his underhook goes from being deep and strong and reaching the high center of Hooper's back to dropping down to Hooper's hip. Remember, the only thing stopping Hooper from being able to finish his Darce choke on Borshchev was that strong underhook. The moment it weakened, Hooper's hand was able to shoot all the way through and get a full lock on his own bicep. Then, Hooper immediately drops into a Gator Roll. The reason for this is when you lock up a Darce choke while a person is on their knees, your forearm is cutting off one side of the person's neck, constricting blood flow, but nothing is cutting off the other side because their arm and shoulder are in the way, especially the more they have their arm opened up. But when you Gator Roll, you can start to close that arm down. The goal being that if you close it tight enough, their own arm and shoulder will actually choke the other side of their neck, finishing the Darce. There are a few different ways to put that finishing touch on closing up the arm for the choke. One of the most popular versions is to execute a full Gator Roll until you can get back up onto your knees with your opponent stuck on their side. From here, your opponent's arm and shoulder is pushed much tighter into the side of their own neck. Now it's just a matter of squeezing and sinking your pressure to fully complete your Darce choke. This is probably what Hooper had in mind. As you can see, he executes a full Gator Roll, but in the middle of him coming up to his knees, Borshchev reached up and patted Hooper's back. The referee saw this as a tap and then jumps in to stop the match. Borshchev and his team, they immediately argued that he didn't tap, but at that point it was too late. The fight was over. Now, one could argue that Borshchev didn't really tap and that the fight shouldn't have been stopped, and I actually would tend to agree. I don't think that he really tapped. But that does not take away from the fact that Hooper set up a very nice Darce and was just a second or two away from getting up to his knees to apply the finishing pressure for his choke. Not to mention, he was completely out-grappling him for 2 whole rounds. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of Jiu-Jitsu. This has been a UFC Jiu-Jitsu breakdown, but remember, you don't have to be some insanely athletic UFC cage fighter to learn this amazing art. Anyone can do it. We have kids classes, we have adult classes, everyone gets to try it out a week free. So come on over to Shell BJJ right here in Portland, Texas, and give it a try. Thanks for watching this episode of UFC Jiu-Jitsu Breakdown.